and welcome to Bogus Weirdness. What you're about to watch is an experimental music ensemble. Everything that you're watching is improvised, and it's live right now at WCAT in the CAT studios. All the music you're about to hear, all the lyrics, even the camera work has not been rehearsed. This is a live experimental performance. Sonic Glasnost.
Lifted up to the top of the spectrum and carry it away to a new dilemma. Have you seen this happy night? It's only a state of mind.
They're tiny little tingles, little sprinkles of color and light, messing up my mind, kind of out of sight. Here in Winthrop, we have a place called CAT. And you are home right now, and you're watching me. Creeping into your living room, your bedroom, your kitchen. Oh, yeah. This sonic glass nose thing, man, it's really quickly across the plains. In herds of thousands, herds of millions, herds of billions of individuals. Billions of individuals, no two are the same. Each one is different. Each one is heading toward a new game. And only they can exist in a world where light and darkness pervade. They search the plains for food. They move across deserts. They cross mountains. They cross prairies. They find water wherever they can. They are nomadic in the truest sense. They never know where to stop. They're just heading home, wherever that may be.
Conformity bebop. Conformity bebop. Conformity bebop. Hey, it's okay. Everything will be all right. Don't worry.
Excuse me, sir.
It's a
Can you
conformity
show me the
bebop.
way to the gathering place?
Good evening. I am your cruise director. Juanito.
Oh.
To the left, we have the homeless. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. But we gotta, hey, it's okay. Everything will be alright. Hello, I'm back again. Over to the right, we have the impoverished, the artists, the musicians. Leave those bums alone. But we gotta save them, Don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. Everything's fine. It's a conformity jam, conformity bebop. I'm the Mondo Bondo. The locksmith, I drive around town. It gets me down. But it's conformity bebop. Conformity bebop.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm gonna make me a shirt of galleys, so I can live up to what I say. I'm gonna wear it wherever I go, and no one will ever be able to cross my words.
In general, do you feel that George Bush has been a good president?
No, I don't actually. I think if you, for a variety of reasons, but I think if you look back at the Reagan-Bush years, what you're going to find is America in decline in lots of ways. And I think that I particularly look at our foreign policy and at our federal budget policies, and I find that the Reagan-Bush years have been abysmal. We're looking, we've run up the largest deficit in the history of the world in the last decade of Reagan-Bush years. A lot of that basically due to enormous military spending, spending on the military that far exceeded what we needed for national defense. Right now, we've been spending about $300 billion a year on the military. Most of that, $160 billion a year, is going to defend Western Europe from a non-existent Soviet threat at this point. We spend $18 billion defending Norway from who knows what, from the Finns supposedly, and we're continuing to maintain 300,000 troops in West Germany against troops in East Germany, and they've all been Germany for over a year. It's just insane. One way of looking at it is you probably know the Soviets have about 300,000 troops and dependents in Germany also. And Soviets were working to withdraw those troops, but they can't afford to. And so they've asked the German government to support those troops, to keep them housed, to keep them fed, and to help bring them back to the Soviet Union. So we're sitting in a situation right now where the German government is spending billions and billions of dollars, or billions and billions of marks, to support Soviet troops in Germany. At the same time, U.S. taxpayers are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to keep U.S. troops in Germany. Okay, and so we're subsidizing troops in Germany while at the same time the Germans are subsidizing the troops that we're supposedly defending against. It's totally insane, and I think the situation we're in is that George Bush is unable to keep up with the times. George Bush is not able to keep up with the kind of leadership that we've got in the world right now. He still sees things in terms of Soviet threat and Cold War and East-West relations, and the reality is that that's just went down the tube. And it's went down the tube permanently after the situation in the old Soviet Union just this last August.
But can we be sure? Are we sure that the Soviets aren't a threat anymore? I mean, with the instability in their country now, how do we know that there isn't going to be some kind of a military coup that could possibly become a threat?
Well, I think that there's no way that the Soviets can be the kind of threat that we've built the military up for. The kind of military we built, the kind of military posture we've had around the world basically entailed the idea that the Soviet Union would have a whole number of allies, a host of allies, Romania and Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, and would in fact, all these troops would in fact take part in an invasion of Europe in the situation of keeping U.S. troops there. And clearly, for the Soviet Union to be a threat, they'd have to invade Poland before they reach Germany or France, and so it's really ludicrous to think that that's going to happen. And certainly, no one, even the most ardent right-winger in the Pentagon, thinks that the Polish and Czech armies are going to be allies of the Soviet Union anymore. And so I think in terms of the kinds of threats that we've planned for, no. I mean, there's no possible way, even if the most right-wing elements in Soviet society took power again, there's no way they would be that same kind of threat. They'd be mostly a threat to their own population. I think one of the things that you hear a lot about is nuclear weapons. What's happening with the Soviet nuclear weapons? And that's a good question. What is happening? I've thought all along that we've had much too many nuclear weapons, and that the best thing we could do is to get rid of them. And the START treaty that was just signed makes a step towards that, but it's important to remember that while the START treaty was being negotiated, we actually built more weapons, more nuclear weapons than we're ever going to destroy because of the START treaty. Boris Yeltsin recently said exactly that the START treaty is crazy. I mean, it doesn't destroy enough weapons. Right now, 5% of our nuclear arsenal could more than destroy the entire world. And what's the point of keeping more? And so I think to the extent that we've heard that, that's true. We do have to worry about the nuclear weapons, but the way to deal with that is to destroy the weapons. Okay, it's not to build a Star Wars. It's not to try to create some kind of bubble shield for $1 trillion. It's to get rid of the weapons, both in the U.S. and in the Soviet Union.
Well, if we don't need all these weapons, why do we keep creating more and more weapons?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's different people think different things. Some people think it's just, basically our economy is driven in lots of ways by military spending, and it creates a lot of jobs, and there's a huge lobby for more military spending. Certainly here in Massachusetts, it's really important, and that's one of the reasons. There's an interest in continuing that. I think that there are people out there who really believe that. Somehow the more nuclear weapons we have, the safer we are, even though that it's really illogical. Even Winston Churchill, an ardent right-winger, made the comments about what's the point of being able to make the rubble bounce 40 feet in the air. It just doesn't make sense after a while. And I think that people are also just trapped. People don't know. It's sort of people don't know anything else, I guess is the best way to put it. They're sort of trapped in this system, this mad system, and aren't willing to take the step towards getting out of it, which to a lot of us seems like the only logical step to take. I think one of the things that, to get back to Bush and the presidency, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, we just went through the Persian Gulf War, which I disagreed with. I thought it was, I thought it was crazy, and I think in hindsight we've killed 250,000 Iraqis, but we haven't changed what's gone on. Kuwait is still a horrible dictatorship. Saddam Hussein is still in power. The Kurds are still being oppressed, and things are pretty much back to status quo, except that the country's been destroyed and a couple 100,000 people killed. I think one of the things that happened in that war is we saw the Patriot missiles and a lot of these high-tech weapons, and everyone sort of oohed and ahed, and it was really primetime TV entertainment in lots of ways. I think the thing that people don't understand, by and large, is that during the period of time when we were building these weapons, we were building the Patriot missiles, the United States share of the world electronics market went from about a 95% share to a 5% share, and so essentially we're building things that are useless, right? We're building MX missiles and Patriot missiles and nuclear weapons, and no one can use those. You can look around the room. I don't have any of those in here. What I do have is a stereo, a TV set, and furniture. The kinds of things. So we're not producing the kinds of things that are practical anymore. What we are doing is putting everything into the military, and that's hurt our economy in the long term. We don't have the same kinds of manufacturing jobs that we used to have. The only manufacturing jobs that we really have, certainly in this state, that are high paying are military jobs. And I think if you look at manufactured goods in this country, we used to be the major exporter of manufactured goods. And at this point, the only goods that we export more of than we import are the only goods that we export more than we import are weapons. Okay, everything else we import a lot more of, and a lot of that is directly related to the fact that so much of government spending and so much of our engineering and research money goes directly into weapons.
Let's say hypothetically we were able to cut the military budget. Well, what kind of where could this money go, and what would this money be good for?
Well, we put it back into jobs, into creating good jobs, into rebuilding our communities. Clearly, you drive around the area. Clearly we need work on the roads. Clearly we need more mass transit, better mass transit. Clearly we need to clean up the environment, to clean up the harbor. That's going to cost a lot of money. Before Reagan and Bush got into the office, the federal government used to cover most of those kinds of big sewage projects. I'll give you an example. Right, the last figure I saw for the harbor cleanup is going to be $6 billion. Okay, that's going to come out of our water rates. It's not a tax increase; it's a water rate increase. Okay, for our rates here in Cambridge, it's probably going to raise them up 4 or 5 times. Now, traditionally, or before Reagan and Bush got into office, the federal government would have covered about $5 billion of that. Okay, about 80% of that would have been federally funded. At this point, the federal government is scheduled to pay about $100,000 of it. Okay, and that's a prime example of where that money could go. Okay, the amount of money it's going to cost us out of our water rates to clean up the harbor is the amount of money it's going to cost us in federal taxes to build one B-2 bomber that we don't need, that's not going to work. Okay, and so that's a good example of where it could go. Our schools need funding. The class sizes are going up. Teachers need more pay. There's just a lot of different places out there where this money could go. Some of it could go into deficit reduction, and I think some of it could go into tax cuts for working people. We keep hearing about the need for a capital gains tax cut. What we need is a tax cut for working people so they can go out and buy stuff and drive the economy that way. Another capital gains tax cut is only going to help some of the big companies build more factories in Mexico and take more jobs away from people here.
So you think if President Bush gets reelected, things will get worse for Middle America?
I have no doubt they will. Yeah, Middle America is getting wiped out. It's every study that I've seen, everything I've read, just shows that there's more poor people and more people becoming poor, and a very small, 1%, 0.5% of the population that's getting very rich, incredibly rich. And so, yeah, I have no doubt that if President Bush gets reelected, it's going to be hard for working people. In fact, I think because of the Reagan-Bush legacy, that whoever gets elected, it's going to be hard for working people. I think we've just begun to see we have the savings and loan crisis. Well, we're just begun. It's just the tip of the iceberg. We're beginning to see insurance companies becoming fragile. We're beginning to finally, the junk bond furor of the 1980s is finally coming back at us, and those bonds are finally coming due, and junk bonds was a good name for them because they're junk, and we're going to see pension funds going down. So I think we've got a lot of potential trouble down the road that has been, the seeds were sown in the 1980s and the rah-rah 80s, and there's, by the middle of the 90s, we're going to have a lot of different problems out there. And I think the only way we're going to solve it is by redirecting our priorities. We need to create wealth in this country again. We just can't live off of products produced in other places. We've got to get back to producing, basic wealth producing items. Our machine tool industry we have to rebuild.
Well, it doesn't seem like the American public has been getting that message, or the White House, for example, has been getting the message that we need to go towards domestics and work towards domestic policy. So far, we've seen quite a few scandals come up over the last decade. The Iran-Contra scandal, SNL scandal, the other banking scandals. Right. Bush has been involved. And now there's the October surprise. Is Bush in trouble in this election? Are these scandals going to hurt Bush, or do the American people even care? What do you think of that?
I don't know if the scandals are going to hurt him or not. It's hard. It's still a year away. Who knows what's going to come out? A few years ago, I thought the scandals were going to hurt him, and clearly it didn't. I personally think that until the Democrats offer an alternative, what's the point if they're going to run somebody who's just going to be George Bush Jr.? Why not go for the real thing? And so I think that what's needed is a Democrat candidate or an independent candidate who's going to offer an alternative, offer tax relief for middle-income people. Tax the rich. Rich people can afford to pay more taxes. I'm sorry. If we go back and we look at the amount of taxes being paid by different segments of the society, 20, 30 years ago, the rich and big companies are paying a hell of a lot more than they are right now. And, they can afford it, frankly. And the country needs to spend money on different things, and we ought to. There's not a candidate who's offering that message right now. I think if there is one, that they'll have a chance against Bush. In my mind, the scandals are hideous, the scandals that have been out there. I think that it's outrageous, the kind of things that have gone on. It's completely undemocratic. The kinds of foreign policy by a handful of military people in the White House basement that no one knows about. The American people don't know about it. Their elected officials don't know about it. It's horrible. I mean, it's horribly undemocratic. I think that should be enough. Whether it will be, I don't know.
How does mass sane freeze try and get this message out to people that military spending is exorbitant and runaway and we don't need as much of it, and how do people usually respond?
People generally respond well. I think that there's a lot of support out there for the message of getting money back into our communities. We go out and knock on doors all over Massachusetts. I'm talking to people about this. We do events all over the state. We have speakers. We'll do hearings. We'll do petitioning on street corners. There's a whole variety of ways to get people's attention. We get people involved in meetings with our senators, our congresspeople. They make sure they hear from regular people and not just the special interests down in Washington all the time. So it's a wide variety of methods to get out to people. And what I find in going out knocking on doors or going out talking at meetings or Rotary clubs is that people understand that there's problems. People are looking for solutions, and one of the things that they do see is that it's crazy to keep spending $160 billion a year defending Europe from a non-existent threat. And at the same time, these countries are, Europe is one of our main economic competitors, and instead of putting that money into rebuilding our economy, we're putting it into the military, into defending against a Polish invasion of Paris, basically.
Okay. Okay, so if you could give one example of what you think the most blatant use of unnecessary military spending is, what would you say?
I think it's there's so many. I think the maintaining troops in Europe to the tune of $160 billion is the largest and therefore the most blatant. I think maintaining the push and the maintenance of a 500, 600 ship navy is crazy. I mean, we've built this military apparatus to be able to fight wars all over the globe at the same time. We just don't need that. I'm sorry. The war in the Gulf showed that there's really not a threat out there, a military threat. The Iraqi army is the fourth biggest army in the world, and we used a small portion of our forces and really just devastated the country. I mean, in a week or 3 days or whatever it was, a month of bombing.
But some people would argue if we didn't have that huge military force, then we wouldn't have been able to dispatch somebody like the evil Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, but I think the point is that we used a fraction, a tenth of the forces that were available, and that was the fourth biggest army. So what are we going to need against the 15th biggest army? Okay, and I think that the idea that we're going to fight 15 wars at once all over the globe, I hope that's not what we're going to do. I hope that we're going to still search for peaceful solutions and not just immediately go to war everywhere. And if that's the case, that war is going to be a last option. Then we don't need 12 aircraft carrier task forces. Okay, it's crazy. So I think that's the most blatant. I think if you look at the current budget, some of the weapon systems they're pushing for are ridiculous. The B-2 bomber is a great example. Its mission is obsolete. It's as obsolete as a mission can get. Its mission is to, fly deep into Soviet airspace after 12,000 nuclear missiles have already shot off to bomb whatever is left in the rubble. So that the mission itself is crazy. Then if you look at the airplane, it's supposed to be able to fly without being picked up on radar, and everyone says that it's easy to see it on radar. Okay, so the whole point of having it is out the window. And the last report I saw, just to finish, is that there's something like 140,000 flaws and errors in the production of the first model of it. Okay, 140,000, and that's it's crazy. And these are to the tune of $1 billion apiece. I mean, why do that? Why are we spending the money? The last bomber we built that Sane Freeze and myself opposed was the B-1 bomber. We were told how important it was to to protect us and to have a nuclear deterrent. Well, the thing is down the can. It's in the trash can now. It doesn't work. Okay, which is what we said all along. And again, we spent tens of billions of dollars on this. And I think we're seeing just the continuation of this system that's built this momentum of its own, and it's not gonna stop it. The way I actually look at it is that the people, the Soviet leadership, Yeltsin, the anti-coup leadership, went out, stood in the streets, faced tanks to prevent their military and Cold War leadership from taking back over and stopping their democracy. Well, in many ways, we have the same problem in this country. Okay, our problem is that we've got people in leadership in the military, in the CIA, in the White House, who are in that same mindset, who still feel that they're facing the evil Russian bear instead of facing this new group of leaders. And they can't get out of that. They seem to be incapable of getting out of that. And we've got to push. Our people, our movements have got to push for our own democracy, which means, changing our priorities, getting rid of this ancient Cold War leadership, and bringing in new people who can deal with a new world situation.
So, do you think war, especially now that the Gulf War has just, ended several months ago, and using that as a model, or any other war in history, do you think war is still going to be a practical solution, or is a practical solution to solving problems among countries?
I don't think it is, personally. And I think the Gulf War, I don't think the Gulf War was necessary. I think that the kind of steps that were taken at the beginning, the move to the United Nations, the move to sanctions, the building of sanctions that virtually every country in the world signed on to, is more of a way to deal with a problem of one country invading another country. I think that what we did was just, as we hear more and more reports, it was really horrible. The bulldozering of trenches and burying alive thousands of soldiers there, the indiscriminate bombing of the country. We saw pictures on TV of all the smart bombs, but the reality is that very few of those weapons hit their right target, and those were a very small percentage of the weapons overall. We were carpet bombing that area, killing indiscriminately civilians, military, women, children, didn't matter. And I just don't believe that that's ultimately the way we're going to solve problems. I mean, if you look at the world right now, you've got conflict going on all over the place. You have a horrible civil war looking like it's going to break out in Yugoslavia. You've got wars that have been happening in Africa and all across the world, and they just don't seem to be solving any problems. What they're doing is just killing a lot of people. And it seems to me that we've got to get to a point where we can sit down and talk over problems and figure out problems and come to solutions that don't involve killing each other. I mean, we wouldn't put up with that if it was our children. We don't put up with that kind of behavior. We don't put up with that kind of behavior in our communities, but somehow we think it's okay to have that kind of behavior in the world, at the world level.
Can you give a couple of examples of countries that don't use war as a way of solving their problems and that have been successful?
Well, I think that you can look at situations where wars, you can look at India as an example, Gandhi in India, where they reached a goal that they had of freeing themselves and having independence without going to war. I think you can look at different countries out there. You can look at the country of Costa Rica, which until didn't even have an army until the United States started pushing it. And I'd have to look it up. I don't even know if they have a real army right now. It might just be a police force. But they literally have never had an army. They haven't found. They've been able to live in freedom in the world. Haven't been invaded by everyone, and haven't found the need for an army. You can look at countries with small armies, countries like Ireland or Sweden, and again, they seem to be getting along fine, without a big army. I think that I think it's a step. I mean, I think it's a big step, and I hope it's a next step in human evolution to move away from killing each other over nationalistic ideals. I don't know. It's a tough one.
How about Dan Quayle? What do you think of Dan Quayle? Why did President Bush pick him as vice president?
That's a good question, why he picked Dan Quayle as vice president. It could have, a lot of people say it was just to scare off assassins, right? Because we didn't want to have Dan Quayle as president. It could have been just a bone to the far right. Quayle is a very far right, right winger, and runs in those circles. And those are the people who were least supportive of George Bush, and it could have been a bone to him. I don't know why he picked Dan Quayle. It was certainly a scary pick. There's also people who think it might have been it might have been a way to open up and allow a lot of candidates in 1996, right? Because Quayle's not such a strong person that he's going to get a challenge, as opposed to Bush picking a Baker or someone who would almost be a automatic nominee, automatic heir apparent. I'm not involved in Republican politics and don't know for certain, why he would do such a strange thing as pick Dan Quayle to be vice president. But he certainly didn't pick the most qualified person, unless the qualifications for being president are a really low handicap. A roughie.
Good times.
You love me. Nothing stronger than that.
I can't control what's happening to me.
What do you mean? You do love me, don't you?
Tonight, someone else will be more in love with me than you are now.
Someone else? Who?
I don't know.
Camille! Camille! Jesus Christ, what's going on?
Back.
What's the punchline?
Joseph, I'm serious. I know you may not believe me, but I'm serious.
Camille, you should be an actress. I do believe you. Almost. A few months ago, something happened. You don't know what. Since then, you've
The
become...
most desirable woman in the world.
Right. But the catch is...
I changed.
Two different men's ideas of ultimate desirability. That's great.